When we're going into modifications, we want to avoid stomach lying positions. This just protects your fetus and protects your expanding belly. So pretty much right from the get-go, no more stomach lying, especially in the studio. Some women still feel comfortable to lie on their stomachs, like in bed at home or on the couch for a couple weeks in the beginning of their pregnancy, but then we scale back and we no longer lie on our stomach. We want to avoid overstretching. So relaxin is a hormone that's in our body, which relaxes our hips. So it gets our hips nice and wide so our baby can come out of the pelvis, which is so good for labor, but it creates complications during pregnancy and even that postpartum phase where you're still having that hormone pumping through our veins. So we want to avoid overstretching because this can also overstretch those ligaments and overstretch your muscles, which need to have a full range of motion. But if they're all overstretched, you're going to have joint pain because your joints won't be able to be stable enough. We also want to prevent overextending our core. So we think of like a cobra or an up dog, like that sort of thing during pregnancy, because it's already putting pressure on that six-pack ab muscle and separating as our growing belly gets bigger. We want to not further that by doing those exercises quite so much. And then lastly is rotating with disassociated hips. That means like your shoulders are going one direction, your hips are going the opposite direction. There are only very few exercises that are programmed in F45 classes to that, but some of them are like with the ball goes one direction, hips go the opposite. We don't want to do that during pregnancy. It just creates a lot of pressure on your linea alba down the center of your core. So instead, you're going to rotate your full body, hips and shoulders in the same direction in each side. But it is okay to stretch in those disassociated hips with your shoulders. So a lot of women are like, I can't ever not rotate my body at all, which is false. You do want to be able to rotate your body, like reaching for certain exercises. You're literally rotating during that. So you want to be able to accommodate for real life activities, but stretching is like a more safer and controlled way to do so. And when we modify, we're going to talk about impact or hit exercises, mostly to protect your pelvic floor, but also some exercises do put a lot of pressure on that center line of your core, your linea alba. Core exercises, quick modifications we can use, inclines, tabletop positions, standing positions, so standing core. You can come into a propped, almost like back lying position, but you have like a ball behind you. And I'll show you what all of these are going to look like. 75 to 80% of women complain about low back pain. So we want to be able to prevent that excessive low back pain because their weight is being distributed differently. So with their growing belly, instead of their butt being like their larger sense of muscle and it's coming backwards, with a growing belly, it's pulling you farther outwards and down, which creates this arc in their back, a lot of pressure on their lower back area. And some exercises that we do, especially in our strength classes, can put excessive strain on your low back. And then some also put excessive strain on your core without being like a true core exercise. So you'll see what those look like as well. When we move into the second, usually we want to start to implement no more up dog or cobra poses, anything that places excessive stress on that core that just overstretches it. Some of our warm up and cool downs include some of these poses. So we just want to be aware of that for pregnant members that aren't doing that too much during class. Then advanced backline core work and full center planks. Those are two core exercises in categories that are advanced. They're like more difficult, which places more stress on that linea alba down the center. So we'll modify those. And then pull-ups. I feel like that's one of the strength exercises that we don't usually think, oh yeah, it's a core exercise. It's going to be, that's one that is, I'd say one of the first that most women do actually have to modify. High impact exercises. That is not like heavy second. It's more like 20-ish weeks on is what I would actually say for like jumping type of exercises and running. And then again, twisting with disassociated hips. We want to keep them in the same direction unless we're just doing a more general, gentle stretch. When we move into the third, women can lie on their backs, but if they're feeling nauseous, if they're feeling dizzy or getting headaches from any backlying positions, then we want to come into an incline. Most, I would say majority of women are more comfortable at a slight incline right when they hit the third trimester. Some can be flat on their back their entire pregnancy. We just don't want to be there for an extended period of time, because as you're growing belly and all that weight is in your stomach, it's going to put pressure on your vena cava, which feeds your placenta. So we don't want to like pinch that source of food for baby. But these are your cautions, like dizziness, nauseousness, and headaches, which would indicate to your body it is maybe pinched. So we just come out of those positions. Nothing to freak out, but like you don't need to use inclines right away in the second. Just as you progress, you'll feel more comfortable through that third trimester. Crunches, sit-ups, leg lifts, Russian twists, real advanced core work. Third trimester, we pretty much take out all of those front-loaded exercises. So this is anything that is like a plank type of position. And it's not just planks, which is what most coaches see, but like burpees and sprawls, like they're all using an actual plank in some way. So we want to bring those into inclines. And then high impact and running. Baby has a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor during the third trimester. So we're going to reduce high impact as much as possible to protect your pelvic floor, to protect your joints that are getting more overstretched from the relaxin hormone. And then also because of that, we take out some more of the uneven surfaces just because it's easier to fall or like twist an ankle. So like if we're on the Bosu ball standing, we're doing some squats, we might just take it from the ground, that sort of thing. When we're looking at stations, when you first walk into the room before you coach, you want to look at every single station and be like, these are the exercises that might give some second or third trimester women some trouble and they might need modifications for. You want to use the same equipment that's already at your station if possible, just because you don't want like random pieces of equipment just sitting around at random stations. Or like if you're prepping for the next class, you might forget to put that away. Try and use same equipment if you can. But we also want to make sure that we're using and working the same parts of your core or the same parts of like upper or lower body for modifying strength exercises so they get the programmed workout that they're supposed to get for that day. When we need to add equipment, usually some of the equipment that we add are any types of inclines, which can be bench, box, sometimes a Bosu ball for second trimester is plenty. The tops of kettlebells can even work, like those heavier kettlebells can work for like second trimester women. We can add resistance bands. That's like a small add to a station, and a dumbbell. The station right behind me has an extra dumbbell, and this pregnant station right in front of it could use it. Let me just shift that for the class. I'll shift it back right after. Again, being aware of the warm up and cool downs. So we want to prevent like overstretching. I'll typically go to a pregnant woman, just like, don't do an up dog in this position, come into more like a cat cow. So let me show you real quick. Cat is great. Super good your entire pregnancy. A cat, you want to stay pretty neutral in your spine. So you just like let your ab muscles go, but you don't hyperextend that low back and lift your abs too much. You just keep it like a good neutral. So you come all the way up into a cat and then just to neutral. Same thing like with an up dog or cobra. Instead of being fully extended, you just come into a neutral stance there. Really important, chat with members before you give modifications. These are the exercises that might give you trouble. Let me give you a modification right from the start. So then you're not like chasing them around the whole class and be like, this is modification for this, or, oh, I didn't see you at that exercise. Next lap through, I'll give you a modification for it. Like it's really nice for you and for them to just have those modifications right from the start. And then you can just remind them during class if they seem to forget. If you aren't able to talk to them, or if you forget about those modifications, make sure you do just keep an eye on those pregnant women during class. Instead of avoiding them, be like, I know that exercise is going to cause them trouble. They're going to it next. Let me just make sure I make my way to that station when they get there so I can give them that modification. And then lastly, make sure they're not coning at all. Make sure they're using proper breath work. So it really is helpful, surprisingly, to be like, inhale as you lower down in a squat, exhale, lift your pelvic floor as you stand up in that squat. Those types of cues are so helpful for pregnant women. Like they feel like they're doing 400 things already, like trying to juggle a million different muscles that they're working and like being okay during pregnancy and lifting in class. So like you just telling them how to breathe during those exercises is really great. And a good way for you to be like, I know how to coach them. I feel comfortable coaching them, even if it's just breath. So those are really easy adds for class. Some things like kettlebell swings are going to put a lot of pressure on your center core, which some pregnant women feel comfortable doing their whole pregnancy. Others they need a lot of work with this. This means scaling down weights, just like what you would do any other person who needs modifications for an exercise, or maybe you go a little bit slower. Some women, I usually just say work a deadlift, because you're still using kettlebells and you're still getting that same like type of range of motion there. Like kettlebell burpees. In second trimester, this is probably okay if they take it like from their knees most of the time. Third trimester, I'd say it's probably not high enough of an incline. They might need to come onto a box as they're doing these burpees. Jumping, any jumping exercise, again, mostly okay. Second trimester, around 20 weeks, you'll see a lot of women scale back naturally, but you can also guide them and be like, I'm not sure if you're comfortable with this. Just make sure you are being careful on your joints. I know pelvic floor could be an issue during this exercise for you, that sort of thing. Give them a modification like you would any other thing. You know, step up onto this box instead of jumping onto this box. Or why don't we do a duck walk out in front of you and then little fast feet backwards. Rower, this puts a lot of strain on your center core. And if you think about it, you're really pulling backwards at the very end, which is almost like a crunch, a reverse crunch as you lean backwards. You might not realize it, or a pregnant woman might not realize it, that they're putting that pressure on their core unless they're looking down. They're like, holy crap, I'm really coning a lot. So I usually encourage women. So instead of coming all the way backwards into that row, you're just stopping at right when your head hits the top of your pelvis. So it's more just arms and legs as you push back rather than you're lean back at the end. Some women, I just say, hop off. We just can't manage the pressure that we're generating in our abs. So we can do other types of cardio exercises that are safer for you at that point. Again, really high level, some of the ones that put pressure on your pelvic floor, core, all around. Like the step up on the balance trainer into a push-up or a sprawl. Again, not necessarily a core exercise, but you are coming into a high plank. So just be aware of that. Same thing like with devil's press. You are almost like a burpee, belly could almost touch the ground, but even if you're jumping backwards into that high plank, instantly it's going to put pressure on that center core. So we could come back, we can step it backwards like we would encourage anyone who needs modification. We could come back into a kneeling position. You can even come onto a box and have the dumbbell on the box. So you can step back into a sprawl and then still having a dumbbell swing up overhead if it's a light enough dumbbell. It's not straining their core too much. Reverse burpee and jumping jacks, again, center core and pelvic floor are stressed. For strength, front rack positions, this is late third trimester, but if anyone's complaining of low back pain, I would encourage dumbbells or kettlebells come to their sides for those exercises instead of that front rack position. Because again, a lot of that weight is already in the front of that person. So your back is like really being taxed. So either back rack for barbell exercises or bring your weights all the way down towards your hips. Still working a lunge is fine. Just beware of placement of a ball when you're on like doing hip thrusts, ball, barbell, whatever it is, plates. Have them put it onto their thighs farther away from their abdomen just to protect their belly, but they can still use weights. You can even use a band in between their legs to give them a more difficult exercise. Or my favorite is just telling them come up into a single foot hip bridge or thrust, because that you don't need any extra equipment and it is brutal. Again, back lying positions, this could be on a bench, this could be on the floor. Just be aware that if someone's feeling dizzy, you just incline it. I recommend inclining it just to one notch up on that bench. So as low as possible with that incline. So you get more of that chest muscle working rather than your shoulder musculature, which typically happens with that incline, because you just want to be able to, you know, have them still hit their chest more. Pull-ups, obviously the easiest modification is add on a bunch of bands to their feet to help them get up, to put less pressure on their core, or just come into a pull down. Pull downs itself from a standing position still put pressure on your core. So make sure you're encouraging that inhale, exhale, but also you can come into that kneeling position, which puts less pressure on that core. So that's another exercise we can just be aware of. These are pretty much the same. The glute bridge to the leg extension, the glute bridge, fantastic. The leg extension, I would probably come into single leg as you kick them out. It does generate a lot of pressure as you're bringing your heels back in. So it's hamstring, but your core, your breath is being forced into your core in that position a little bit more, mostly because it's like hard to bring those heels back. So bring them one back at a time, or don't bring them back at all. Just be in a normal bridge up and down. A lot of pregnant women have tighter hips or like hip pain, hip pinching pain when they're hitting lunges. I usually recommend stepping backwards at an angle with their back knee. So their knee comes out just a tiny bit, almost like a staggered squat would be, but in a lunge, you're farther backwards. So that back knee comes out towards the side. That usually pinches their hip, which like belly's pushing down on the area anyway. And so it gives a little bit more room for their belly and a little bit more room for their hips to move. Instability challenges when you're working single leg movements, easiest modification, do a staggered leg or 2 feet on the ground for a regular deadlift or squat, whatever it might be. All of these, as you probably know, put a lot of pressure on your center core. Same thing with these, as well as your obliques. We do want to be able to work all those movements. So we're going to come into different exercises that do so. And then these are all exercises that aren't typically like, oh, I identify them as a core exercise, but they are heavy front-loaded core movements that occur in strength and cardio classes. So we just want to be aware when we see these in class or ones like these where we're working like any type of plank position, we can give them modifications. So inclines, different pieces of equipment, and so forth. Right, now it comes into the funk part, guys. This is my pregnant belly. It's going to be over the next couple slides. But here's what it could look like during class with any inclines. Again, we want to be working the same parts of your core that are programmed in class. So as close to what you actually see in those exercises as possible is great. Plank jacks, you can bring both feet out at the same time. During third trimester, it might be too much pressure on your core. So 1 foot at a time makes it a little bit easier to manage that intra-abdominal pressure. Mountain climbers, I don't encourage them to bring it like all the way in towards their chest as much as possible, but like a little bit farther in front of their knee or in front of their hip joint is great. You can encourage pauses. You can encourage pulses here, leg holds, anything in that way. But you'll notice especially in that mountain climber one, as I reset, my breath fills in my belly and then I engage my pelvic floor, low abs, all the way up to my upper abs. And then I go into that movement like it just happened. Same thing with burpee, just bring it into an incline. And then the last one is like a reverse plank. You can do this in replacement of a mountain climber as well. It puts a little bit more pressure on your hamstrings, obviously, and glutes as well, but it does work your core. You can just encourage really using your hip flexors and low abs to bring your knee up rather than your legs and your arms to drive that knee up. Really easy modifications again for like typical movements. You'll see mountain climber, knee tuck, sit-ups. You can come into a seated position, working still one knee comes up at a time. Yogi push-up, come into a high incline. Sprawls, again, same thing, incline. You can step it in, step it out. You can jump back in, however they feel most comfortable working. And as long as you don't see any coning in their core, that's key. Same thing with the push-up. You can come into a high plank on the bench. You can come up onto your knees on the bench. And we're coming into really easy switches. A couple things we can do right from the back is a back lying position. This could be on a bench. If they don't want to incline the bench, you can just have them come up into glute bridge while on the bench or on the ground. If there's like a back lying tricep extension or a skull crusher, just come up into a glute bridge, hold that, and have your dumbbells just working as they normally would. Again, bench lying, just one notch up, so as low as possible in that incline. Bent over stances, so both legs bent over, a lot of weight is going forward and down, which puts a lot of pressure on your low back, especially during pregnancy. So you can come up onto a bench and just support your knee in that way. So it's not just too much excessive low back pressure. You can also do a staggered stance for that, for like bent over rows, bent over tricep extension, that sort of thing, just like you would like a squat in the last exercise seen here. But highly recommend a bench. It just helps it a whole lot more so they actually can drive their elbow backwards, really targeting that mid back compared to just like their stomach having to work overload and their low back having to work overload for those. And then for your squats, instead of like third trimester, belly's big, like as you see in this video. So you can come into a sumo stance for pretty much all of your exercises that include 2 feet. You can come into a staggered stance. Those are usually easier modifications just to use. And here are some more fun accessories that I like to see for core work, ones that you don't typically see in class. So this is what you could do. Lean backs are really important, but they do put a lot of stress on your core. So as long as you're managing that pressure through your inhale and exhale, I'd reset in between each rep. But that's like a really fun one that most coaches don't coach on. So that's an easy one. Yes, it creates more pressure on your thighs, but a lot of core work goes into that, especially while pregnant. A down dog to a cat or a cow pose, those are really helpful. Just coach on using your core to lift your glutes up rather than like too much pressure in your hands or your legs. So it should be mostly core work here. A core ball's in between my knees for this exercise, but you can grab like one of the towel, like the sweat towels that you have in class, just roll it up and like fold it in half. It generates like the same sort of like squishiness that you'd like in a core ball. Basically what this does is you're squeezing your knees together, which automatically lifts your pelvic floor. At the very top of that pelvic floor lift, it also encourages your low abs to engage. So if someone's really having trouble engaging those low abs, I always put something in between their legs and encourage them just to practice that movement, squeezing your knees as you lift up. You can squeeze your knees and do the down dog as well. But again, like switching it out for a sweat towel is just really helpful there. Tabletop dumbbell drags. There's almost always a dumbbell lying around. Bird dog. So there's so many ways that you can have variety with a bird dog. So your normal bird dog is just extending one arm, one leg, but we can add a pause to the top. We can add a band to our feet. You can add a band to your inner thigh. You can even add a band to your hand and drive your arms out wide, something just to create some sort of difference there. That third one on the top row, we are pressing into our knee. Really heavy core engagement. So that for this one, most women love this exercise because it's so easy. You need no accessory, and so you're forcing your hand into your knee. So you're pressing them against each other, right? The first one on the bottom is take it into diagonal, really stressing keeping your hips as still as possible as you bring your arms and legs out to the side in that position. You can come into bear crawls. Great, safe exercise for cardio, but also for any core or tabletop position. And lastly, add weights to it. Why not? Like make it hard, make it challenging. So those are bird dog variations. Next are some fun standing poses around the world. Heavy core work without really knowing it. Trying to keep your torso as straight as you can and in full alignment from your head all the way down your spine as you bring the dumbbell all the way around, just like you would coach on any other client. Having a resistance band between your feet really engages those low abs and hip flexors to drive your knee up into a standing position. You can hit standing crunches, really great movement for substituting knee tucks, for substituting bicycle kicks. You can bring your arms all the way out to the side, or like one side comes over to the other to really engage those obliques even extra. The last one in this, standing on your single leg with the dumbbell coming around you. Great core engagement, great work. All you need is a dumbbell. Then again, standing knee drives, but you have the band between your arms. It's going to engage those upper abs a little bit more as you separate and drive your knee up. So it's like a full core being worked, lower body or lower abs all the way up to your upper abs as you use that band. Just normal standing high knees. And then the last one dumbbell in one hand. So this is going to offset your stance. The dumbbell's going to want to pull your abs to the side. So you got a lot of oblique work and low ab work. So I love using this as a modification. If you come into both arms up overhead, it's fine. It's just a little bit less pressure on those obliques. Here's some really easy obliques that you can use in class. We're coming up to an incline for some of these more towards the end of pregnancy, but great modification all through second and third trimester. You're coming into an oblique crunch. You can come into your knees into a side plank. So hip dips, really engaging low abs all the way up to your upper abs. Again, just a normal incline side plank dip. And then my personal favorite is the last one here. It's a leg sweep. So you're dragging your toe along the ground in front of you, engages those low abs a whole lot extra while also working those obliques on the bottom side. Surprisingly okay exercises that women can use during class. I feel like these give people caution, but they're actually great for you and great for pregnant women. So shoot throughs, you're moving your hips with your shoulders in the same line. So you're not twisting. Core work, heavy arms, upper body, lower body. It's a great exercise you can use for anything. Side stretches. Again, people are worried about overstretching in some way or not twisting their body right, but side lying stretches, even like a thread the needle is really good. Again, those are more safe without any weights or any resistance added, and in a gentle and controlled movement. We don't want to overstretch with our already stressed body from those extra accessories and equipment. Lateral step ups. Some women don't like this because it does create pressure on their pelvic floor, but if they're good with their pelvic floor, it's a great one. It actually shifts baby into the right part of their pelvis, especially towards the end of pregnancy. You can do this on a box. You can do this on a bench. You can just come up onto one side, work a side for a half a set. You can do the other side for a half a set, but it's actually really good for shifting baby properly into your pelvis. And then lastly, you can lift heavy. Like, don't be afraid of lifting heavy. Keep women lifting heavy. Super important for motherhood, super important for actual labor and going through that. But you need to build up muscle because most women end up losing a lot of their muscle during pregnancy. So we want to prevent that loss by lifting heavy. Like I said, during the first session, you're still going with your rate of perceived exertion between a 60 to an 80%. So that includes strength training, not only that, but also HIIT. So of your 1 rep max, you can do 80% of that for 10 to 12 reps without a problem. So they can go very heavy. These are some in-studio examples of me during pregnancy, modifying as needed. For the first one, I'm coming onto my knees. The second one, I have tabletop, still working basically a flutter kick. You're sending your hips backwards, or you're coming up to a reverse tabletop, still working that flutter kick. And an upright row, I swapped it out because my belly was in the way from that barbell. So like noticing that when you're coming into class, if you see a barbell for like upright rows, some sort of bicep curls sometimes, we need to give like 2 different weights so they can use for those movements. For these bicycle kicks, you have a down dog into an opposite toe touch. For the next one, a sprawl into a row. I just came up to an incline. Same thing with the crossovers. I used a medicine ball, which was still at my station for the first one, and I just squeezed my inner thighs together, lifted into a tabletop hover. For bench hops is an easy way to modify here. Again, side to side, you can step this in and step this out as you get farther along in your 3rd trimester. This might be a little bit too much impact for a core to maintain, but stepping side to side in that position is great modification. Reverse burpee, you see a reverse burpee kind of a lot now. Squats into an overhead knee drive, awesome way to modify that one.